Hey, good to see all you stalwarts. John is also here. Good to see you, John. Um, yeah, Gompa Robsell uh, fans all. Let's try to set a motivation through prayer, through words, recitation. Sange Churang Chognam La Jangchu Badu Dagni Kyapsu Chi Dagi Chunyen Gipe Sognam Ki Drola benches sange drupa sho. It is a refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma. May I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. Sange Chodang Soki Chognam La Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kyapsu Chi Dagi Chunyen Gipe Sognam Ki Drola Bencher Sange Drupa Sho. So if you're at the point of dying, uh, taking refuge in the Buddha, or, what are you going to do at that point? Just reciting that verse again and again can bring some solace, especially if you've meditated on it, thinking, you know, the real refuge is not possessions and lifespan and power and so forth. The real refuge is the Dharma. And I'm taking refuge in Dharma until I'm enlightened in my future lives, even if I die now. And through the merits that I have collected all my life by studying, practicing, meditating, listening to the teachings, analyzing them through those true collections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all migrating beings. That can be very powerful. By offering this crown, anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and moon, visualized as a Buddha realm, may all migrators enjoy such a pure realm. O holy and perfect pure Lamas, from the clouds of compassion formed in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained, of those to be subdued. Idam Guru Ranam Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay. Greetings to Jennifer and Paul. Good to see you. We're going to do a little meditation. So relax. If you can, relax your body, relax your mind. Remember, you don't have to think about anything else. Recognize your breathing and place your mindfulness on the breathing in front. with some success in calming the mind, being mindful of the breathing. Now move your attention to the mental consciousness, much more subtle object. You may notice your breathing, if you have good concentration, your breathing becoming even more shallow and regular. Just looking at the entirety of the mental consciousness, reminding yourself not to pay attention to what your eyes are seeing, your ears are hearing, your nose is smelling, your tongue is tasting, your body is feeling, sensing. The consciousness that we observe, the mental consciousness, offers no resistance to arising and redissolving of events into the mental consciousness, like clouds in the summer sky, evaporating and forming. Having been told that the Buddha recognized this, told us to recognize this as our conventional Buddha nature, our developmental Buddha nature, that we can develop all that is good and eliminate all that is bad. Using that to recall that the reason we can feel some joy in that we can change, is due to this auspicious moment, having a human rebirth, having met the teachings, heard the teachings of the Dharma. How rare such a situation is, how difficult it is to create the causes for it in the future, how it's changing every moment, and we're heading to death inevitably. Knowing that the Buddha taught the best use of this life of leisure and endowment is to enter in and develop the Mahayana, to possibly even achieve enlightenment in this very lifetime, as opposed to the other great goal of liberation, personal liberation, nirvana. The one vehicle, the ekayana, the Buddha taught, eventually all sentient beings will achieve enlightenment. Having heard this, we recognize that that state of omniscience is developed in dependence upon sentient beings who are kind, who have been kind, who will be kind. They've been our mothers, our friends, even as enemies. They provide the unprecedented opportunity to practice patience and compassion. In the vast tapestry of time, our mental continua, like threads in a carpet and a tapestry, have interwoven with all mother sentient beings at one time or another. recognizing our kinship with them, feeling empathy for their suffering in cyclic existence just as we suffer. Developing compassion to wishing that they would be free from that suffering. And great love, Maha Maitreya, wishing to set them in durable happiness. I think I must become a Buddha in order to benefit sentient beings. There's no other method will suffice. To do so, I have to accumulate the two collections of merit and wisdom, perfectly set out by Nagarjuna, interpreting the Buddhist teachings in the Prajnaparamita Sutras and so forth, expounded on by Buddhapalita and especially Chandrakirti in his Madhyamakavatara, and reframed by Lama Khapa to be more clear to the students of his generation. We ourselves are studying Gompa Rapsal with that intention to accumulate the collection of merit, virtuous karma, through a virtuous motivation at the beginning and by the power of the Dharma as the object, and accumulation of wisdom, insights into emptiness. We're going to listen. I'm going to participate, listening, contemplating on what's being said, meditating on it, meaning holding it single-pointedly when something gels in our mind, the certainty of something, in order to become a Buddha, having accumulated those two collections, the essence of the 6 paramitas. I'm going to participate in order to become a Buddha, to effortlessly, spontaneously, and without error lead all sentient beings out of suffering into enduring happiness, everlasting happiness. So whatever obstacles there are, hardships in listening with my body, with my concentration, bearing with that, even more so collecting virtuous karma. Okay. Bring your attention back to the present. Hi, Suvansh. Rachel is here. KT has joined us. Good to see everyone. Jeremy's in the southern hemisphere, so he's got his woolly cap on, but John should take off his cap because generally, unless when you're receiving teachings, just like when you go visit the Pope or something, you're not supposed to.
Just like when you're in church.
Yeah, like when you're in church, right? Someone will nudge you, take off your hat, take off your your baseball cap. Okay, good to see you. Anyone want to address a question? Yeah, John.
Thank you, Venerable George. You mentioned in the meditation the state of omniscience based upon sentient beings, and this is one of those things that is never. I understand to begin with that it's inconceivable, but what does the I think it addressed maybe in the Maitreya Sangha works. And what does that mean from the point of view of deluded, pathetic creatures like myself? I mean, if I'm going to imagine omniscience, that means he knows that enlightened being knows what the lottery number of the Mega Millions is going to be. And what does it mean?
Yeah. So mm, in the Hinayana, uh, the, that that omniscience, that state of omniscience, is said not to necessarily know immediately all phenomena, but that the Buddha can turn his mind toward everything and know all things. And it doesn't mean, from the Hinayana, it doesn't mean that he is constantly aware of the various truths simultaneously. In the Mahayana, it means that the Buddha does know all of the past, the present, and the future. And as we've mentioned on several occasions, that is not, if you analyze it, that's not in contradiction to people having free will. We still have free will, which path to travel, but the Buddha knows in the end which one we will take. Uh, so the Mahayana, um, at least as is interpreted as by most of the major uh, schools of Mahayana, the Buddha's omniscience is one where he knows all phenomena, conventional and ultimate, simultaneously, directly. And we'll get more detail about that when we get to the chapter on the resultant ground. Right now, we're still on, which ground are we on right now? We're still on the sixth ground, right? And then there's a short exposition of the seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th grounds, some of them a little bit more elaborate than the others. And then a big elaboration on the ground of no more learning. That means Buddhahood, right? The path of no more learning, graduation. So that will come, we'll have more detail about that then. Okay. So yeah. So we're going to begin today, technically, in Thupten Jinpa's text, page 384, if I'm not mistaken, and in the FPMT translation, page 220, translation by Venerable Joan. And for later, I guess, Diana is not here right now, but if she listens to this recording later, if she wants to find this she can search for this stanza, which is a quotation from the Descent into Lanka Sutra, the Lankavatara. The quotation is, just as to a patient suffering from illness, a physician administers medicine, likewise, for the sake of sentient beings, the Buddha taught mind only. So that's where we'd gotten up to last time. And just as a quick reminder where we were, just going up before that, a couple paragraphs before that. Yeah, so Lama Tsongkhapa said in Jinpa's translation, if we fail to cultivate a decisive understanding of this issue, of how to interpret certain scriptural statements as provisional, if we don't understand that, we will comprehend neither the Madhyamaka nor the Chittamatra thought in general. And more specifically, will fail to appreciate the unique standpoints of this tradition, Prasangika tradition of Chandrakirti. Seeing this, I've explained these in detail in the Drangne Lekshe Ningpo, differentiating the provisional and definitive meanings. That was one of the Lama Tsongkhapa's other great texts. So we mentioned that. So that is an entire study in itself. To study that text is like studying Gompa Rapsel. It's different topics, But then Jimba's translation said the following specific phrases in the Samdhi Nirmochana Sutra, the unraveling of the intent sutra, unraveling the intent sutra, as cited in Asanga's summary of the great vehicle. So Asanga wrote this summary of the great vehicle. What is that called? The Mahayana what?
The Sangraha, right?
Sangraha? Yeah, okay. There's a quotation, O Blessed One, Bhagavan, this is being asked by Maitreya to the Buddha, is the image that is the object of concentration different from the mind or not? And the Bhagavan replied, Maitreya, it is not different. Why is it not different? Because consciousness is defined purely in terms of cognition of its object. So I have stated. So we talked a little bit about that, the fact that consciousness always has to have an object. So as it says here, consciousness is defined purely in terms of cognition of its object. If you don't have cognition of an object, you don't have consciousness. This tradition of Chandrakirti interprets all four types of sutra passages mentioned above. So we talked about various citations from the sutras. There were four of them. It does not differentiate among them as some do, meaning maybe Shantarakshita and so forth, interpreting some as interpretable, provisional, and accepting others as definitive. All of them are considered to be interpretable because they're not talking about emptiness, we'll see later. As for the teaching about there being three ultimate vehicles, given that Nagarjuna himself established the finality of only one vehicle in his compendium of sutras, thinking that this can be understood from there, Chandrakirti did not address it he didn't address it here in his commentary. So what is that? So there is Nagarjuna's, does anyone remember, give me a quick exposition of what Nagarjuna's, what's it called, Sutra Samuchaya is. There are several Sutra Samuchayas, or at least two. So Nagarjuna wrote Sutra Samuchaya. What was that about, Paul?
Well, I think it was quotations from sutras supporting their reasonings into emptiness, if I remember correctly.
Right. So like Shantideva composed the text, what's it called?
Shiksha Samuchaya.
Shiksha Samuchaya, the compendium of practices, giving a scriptural basis for many of the stanzas in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara. So Nagarjuna, previous to that, Nagarjuna obviously preceded Shantideva. He had a text that I guess Shantideva was sort of mirroring his Siksha Samuchaya on the Sutra Samuchaya. So it's a compendium of verses. So one of the great translators who's been so kind to the Western world, someone who went by the name of Bhikkhu Pasadika, who actually I think was Dutch, can't remember something. He was actually a Western man who became Bhikkhu. I'm not sure if Bhikkhu Pasadika is still alive, but he's more or less contemporary. If he's not still alive, he died not that long ago. So he translated the entire Sutras Samuchaya, and I think Paul, we went to a lot of effort to get. Paul went to a lot of effort to get this, and so let me just read from that a couple of quotations. So on the way that he broke it up, Bhikkhu Pasadika. So there are many quotations about many things, but one section talking about the ekayana, because right here when it said, as for the teaching about there being three ultimate vehicles, given that Nagarjuna himself established the finality of only one vehicle in his Sutra Samuchaya, the compendium of sutras, thinking that it can be understood from there, Chandrakirti did not address it here in his commentary. So we're going to address it a little bit. And on Monday, I'll try to have a cleaned up version. Right now, I have the version that has, anyway, because of the way the text is formatted, it's hard to read. So let me read a little bit. This is from what Bhikkhu Pasudika called the 10th theme in all of these various, this is, I think, near the end, if not the last of the various sections where there's a theme. So this is talking about the utmost rareness of beings who are resolutely intent on the vehicle of oneness. The vehicle of oneness is how he's translating ekayana. Eka means one, is that right? Eka means one. Yana means vehicle. So ekayana means one vehicle. So instead of triyana, sort of the three vehicles, the Buddha still accepted that he taught. It wasn't like he forgot that he taught three vehicles, but that all of them ultimately lead to the accomplishment of Buddhahood. Even if you follow the Shravakayana or the Pratiki Buddhayana, you achieve those goals, you will eventually awaken from that through the power of the Buddha and the blessings of the Buddha, and you'll enter into the Mahayana and eventually achieve enlightenment. So in one sense, there's one vehicle. So here, let me read a little bit from that section. Beings who are resolutely intent on the vehicle of oneness, and the ekayana, are exceedingly rare. The authenticity of the vehicle of oneness, why that's true, how you can prove that, is attested in a great many discourses and a great number of sutras. For instance, and he goes on for more than a dozen quotations. We'll maybe read 2 or 3. In the holy Sadharma Pundarika Sutra, one that we've talked about several times, this is a quotation. It is with reference to the vehicle of oneness, Shariputra, that I teach the doctrine to sentient beings. And then he says, viz. What is viz? V-I-Z period. How do you say that in English? What does that mean? For instance?
I think it means just cross-reference or see something else, as in
viz. To wait for Diana.
The Buddha vehicle culminating in omniscience. Any second or third vehicle does not exist. This is the natural condition everywhere in all the worlds of the 10 directions. Why? All the Tathagatas, too, who lived in the past in all the world systems of the 10 directions, who will appear in the future, or who live at present in all the world systems of the 10 directions, taught, will teach, and teach now to sentient beings the doctrine with reference to the vehicle of oneness, the Buddha vehicle. So when we talk about the Ekayana, you might think you want to call it the Bodhisattvayana, but that's Bodhisattvayana. That name is part of the triad of Shravakayana, Pratika Buddhayana, Bodhisattvayana. So when you talk about Ekayanas, you say the Buddhayana, because that's where we will all go. In this way, Shariputra, it must be understood. Nowhere in all the worlds of the 10 directions, in the ultimate sense, is there a second vehicle pointed out, how much less a third vehicle. And then there's another quotation in the Satya, that's truth, Kaparivarta, Satya Parivarta Sutra. So the quotation says, because of salvation through the vehicle of oneness, Manjushri. So now he's talking to Manjushri. So all of these bodhisattvas heard from the Buddha many times. There's just one Ekayana. because of the salvation through the Ekayana Manjushri, the quintessence of the great vehicle is found in that Buddha land. I do not point out any vehicle of the disciples or the Pratika Buddhas. For what reason? Because the Tathagata does not entertain any diverse notions. If he had taught some, the great vehicle Manjushri, others, the Pratika Buddhas, and others, again, the disciples' vehicle, meaning teaching them as ultimate vehicles, his mind would not be perfectly pure. The Tathagata would incur the blemish, the fault of being inclined towards something. His compassion would be limited, and he would have been unwilling to share with all sentient beings the doctrine in its entirety. Whatever I teach to them, Manjushri, is just this: setting one's mind on supreme enlightenment in order to gain the insight knowledge of omniscience, succeeding in acquiring omniscience by embarking on the great vehicle, the Mahayana, and really getting to one's place, the ultimate goal of Buddhahood. For this reason, I do not point out any other vehicle other than Ekayana. A Tathagata pointing out a variety of vehicles, Manjushri, would imply his positing different degrees. So that would mean that there were some people who would only reach Shravaka nirvana and they would not leave that. Some would become Pratika Buddhas, they wouldn't leave that, whereas others would become enlightened. A Tathagata pointing out a variety of vehicles, Manjushri, would imply his positing different degrees. It would imply positing individuals as well as small and boundless accumulations of merit and wisdom, as though some sentient beings would only get small accumulations or middling accumulations of merit, and that's where it would end. That's not what the Buddha taught. But since in this realm of the absolute, multiplicity does not hold true, there a multiplicity of vehicles does not hold true either. To teach different vehicles means to teach at the level of conventional truth, a makeshift teaching. At the level of ultimate truth, the vehicle of oneness alone holds good. There is no second vehicle. And then just one other, I'll read part of this from the Prajna Paramita. So he goes on to quote many, many sutras. So that's why Lama Tsongkhapa said, I'm not going to address it here because Nagarjuna addressed it in detail in his Sutra Samuchaya. So I'll try to have a PDF for you on Monday of this section. So the next excerpt is from the Prajna Paramita. Then quotation, those, so I think this is the Bhagavan speaking, Devaputra, so the Buddha is speaking to one of the sons of the god, those Devaputra who have not begun to aspire after the highest complete and full enlightenment should do so. Those Shravakas who won certainty of perfection are unable to aspire after supreme enlightenment. So if they've achieved, nirvana in this lifetime, they're unable to aspire after supreme enlightenment. I think Jennifer, you had questions about this. Why couldn't the Shravakas, once they achieved their nirvana, why wouldn't they develop? So here he's saying they can't. Those disciples who have won certainty of their perfection are unable to aspire after supreme enlightenment. Why? Because they have interrupted the continuity of the circuit of mundane existence, the cycle of mundane existence. They've left samsara. If they begin to aspire after the highest complete and full enlightenment, I shall be pleased and do everything their roots of merit should be damaged. Then they will perfectly apprehend the sublime teaching, loftier than the lofty, converging on the vehicle of oneness. Okay, I won't read anymore. So that's that can give you a little bit of an idea.
Uncle George?
Yes.
Did he just say that given that he would look to damage the roots of virtue of those on the Shravaka and Pratyeka Buddha path for them?
No.
I misunderstood.
He would help to overcome the damage to their roots of virtue. Yeah. So, yeah. So that was that we just mentioned that last time, but I didn't give you an idea of what the Sutra Samuccaya said. So that's a text by Nagarjuna quoting all of these sutras. With respect to the remaining three types of sutra passages, so there were four kinds of passages, one of which was talking about the ekayana. With respect to the remaining three types of sutra passages that establish mind only to possess intrinsic existence, that's a position of the Chittamatra, and deny external reality, those are their main positions, right? There's no external reality that's a different entity than the mind, and that the mind itself is intrinsically existent, inherently existent. The following passage from the Lankavatara Sutra, the descent into Lanka Sutra, is the scriptural source revealing them to be provisional in meaning. So this is this particular verse. There are others also, but this one is known. Just as to a patient suffering from illness, a physician administers medicine, not according to the doctor's, this is my favorite medicine, I'm getting a kickback for this, whatever, but prescribes the medicine that is suited to the illness of the patient. Likewise, for the sake of sentient beings, the Buddha taught mind only, meaning that some beings who were not yet capable of taking the stronger medicine of the teachings on emptiness, the Buddha taught mind only. So D.T. Suzuki translated the two texts on composed two texts on the Lankavatara Sutra. One is called Studies in the Lankavatara. The other is his translation of the Lankavatara. I think there's a third volume that has the Tibetan and Sanskrit, but here, this is from his translation of the Lankavatara Sutra. So that verse, the way he translates it is this: a good physician administers medicine according to his patients. So indeed do the Buddhas discourse in accordance with the mental capacity of beings. So he doesn't mention, in that quotation, he doesn't mention mind only, as in the Tibetan translation. So FPMT translation by Venerable Joan, just as patients who are ill, just as to patients who are ill, a doctor gives medicines, meaning in accordance with their illness, the Buddha similarly also thoroughly taught mind only to sentient beings. So, Doris, would you be kind enough to put up that PDF? So if you take a look, there we go. It has appeared in the chat. This takes us, there we go. So if you take a look at this, I wanted to, you can, and again, we'll go over this in more detail on Monday in discussion group, but I wanted you to have this now. This is a motivation Geshe-la gave at the beginning of one of the classes. Let me make this bigger so I can read it. On July 8th in 2004 in the mornings. Remember, I think I told you during the summer courses, Geshe-la would always give a motivation, kind of like Trijang Rinpoche would quote various things when he gave the what's it called? The liberation in the palm of your hand. So Geshe-la said, I'm going to quote Nagarjuna and the precious garland, verses 394 to 396. So you see the Tibetan there if you're a Tibetanite, or you can read that. And there's the Sanskrit for Suvash and the other Sanskrit scholars. Can you read that, Suvash? Can you read the Sanskrit? Can you see the Sanskrit?
Venerable George, I mean, this is all in English, right? Yeah, it represents the Sanskrit, but I actually read a lot better if it is in the original Sanskrit.
There is the second verse. If you look at that page, it says, now I'm going to quote Nagarjuna. There's Tibetan verse.
Venerable George, I think he means that because the Sanskrit's in Romanization instead of in Devanagari.
I was thinking, you mean you'd like to see it in Devanagari?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, yeah. This is a much longer route.
Yeah, okay.
But
Anyway,
thank you nevertheless.
yeah. So, Geshe said it in Tibetan, and so we'll use two different translations of that verse here. One by Jeffrey Hopkins in his translation of the Precious Garland, and one by Geshe Tekchok in his discourse on that, which Venerable Steve translated and was eventually edited by Venerable Chudran, Bhikkhu Thupten Chudran, who seems to get all the credit when people are quoting this text. They're always saying it was by her. It was actually translated. It's teaching by Geshe Tekchok and translated by Venerable Steve. But anyway, Jeffrey Hopkins translates it like this. Just as a grammarian first has students read a model of the alphabet, so Buddha taught trainees the doctrines they could bear. So this is talking about sequential teaching. Just that verse, Geshe Tekchok's translation, or in that text, it says a language teacher, instead of saying a grammarian, will make some students read from a diagram of the alphabet. Right? So, when you were in kindergarten, there were these big letters up, teacher would point A, B, or write on the blackboard, right? Just as a language teacher will make some students read from a diagram of the alphabet, likewise, the Buddha taught the Dharma in accordance with his disciples' abilities. So it doesn't mean that he would stop at the alphabet, but in order to read a word, you have to know the alphabet. In order to read a sentence, you have to know the word. So everything goes back to to different levels. So the second verse says, to some, he taught doctrines to turn them away from ill deeds, from negativity. So that would be the very first kind of teachings the Buddha gave. Do no negative actions. To some, for the sake of achieving merit. So that means accumulate all virtue, like the famous verse that we've talked about many times. To some, based on duality. So here we'll see in the commentary what that means, that when the Buddha taught, beyond just the basic part of the person of initial scope, avoid negativity, create virtue for happiness in the future life, how to escape from cyclic existence, the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, first of all, based on duality. He said that everything was truly existent. So that's talking about the person of intermediate scope, some based on duality. To some, he taught doctrines based on non-duality. That would imply, first of all, the Yogacara, the Chittamatra, and to some, he taught what is profound and frightening to the fearful, having the essence of emptiness and compassion, the means of achieving unsurpassed enlightenment. So in Geshe Tekchok's translation, it says, the Dharma he taught to some for the purpose of stopping negativity. To some, it is aimed at the practice of virtue. And to some, he taught one that is based on duality. He taught to some a Dharma not based on duality. That would mean when the commentary comes, that might sound like he's talking about the corrective view of emptiness, but this is talking about the first, transcending the Shravaka and Pratika Buddha of Yana's presentation of all phenomena are truly existent. He taught non-duality in the Yogacara. The phenomena are not dual. He taught to some a Dharma not based on duality. And he taught the profound Dharma that terrifies the timid. Its essence is wisdom and compassion, and it is the means of attaining full awakening. So Yeah, I think I've gone over the main part. So you can read this at your leisure. We'll go over this on Monday. Geshe-la's commentary on those verses. So the sense is that we can take away from this is that the Buddha teaches according to the needs of sentient beings. Just as a doctor gives medicine not in accordance with any preconceived idea or stronger medicine that is necessary, but teaches in accordance with the needs of the patients. That was the quotation that we have. Just as to a patient suffering from illness, a physician administers medicine. Likewise, for the sake of sentient beings, the Buddha taught mind only, meaning that was the medicine that was appropriate at their particular level. Making sense? Okay, good. Yeah, that's not too bad. So continuing in Thupten Jinpa's translation, medicine cannot be administered to specific patients according to the personal inclination of the physician. You know, if your inclination is to advise people to drink bleach, you know, to overcome infection by COVID, that's it cannot be administered that way. That's not right. It must conform to the nature of the illness of the patients. In the same way, it is explained, the Buddha's teaching, so you might think, well, the Buddha's teaching on emptiness, that's the best teaching. Why not give that to everyone? That's not appropriate for everyone. Maybe it's too strong for some people. The Buddha's teaching on mind only is also not given in accordance with the Buddha's own personal viewpoint. It is given in accordance, that's not the Buddha's final view, that mind only is the actual truth. It is given, the teaching on mind only is given in accordance with the mental dispositions of the spiritual trainees. In this way, we recognize the former scriptural statement about mind only to be provisional, to be an interpretable teaching. Everyone okay with that? What do they say in New York? Do you have a problem with that? Okay. So continuing, following the passage that we just read, just as a patient suffering from illness, right? That was a quotation from the Lankavatara Sutra. Just as a patient suffering from illness, a physician administers medicine. Cited in the commentary, following that passage, Chandrakirti writes, likewise, so this is in the Bhasham, in his auto commentary. Likewise, the Bhagavan states in the sutra, and he cites extensively from the Lankavatara Sutra up to how then can one attain full awakening. These passages are the scriptural sources that indicate how foundation consciousness, which Chittamatra hold to be definitive, is in fact provisional. Right? When we talk about the various positions, they believe in an alaya vijnana upon which all of the seeds are implanted, from which they ripen, and that continues, that alaya vijnana continues on from life to life and everything like that. So here, yeah, I think maybe it's coming. I have some notes here somewhere. Did I have that there? Okay. Yeah, okay. So in his explanation of the commentary, so that means what? Chandrakirti's Bhasham, his commentary, his auto commentary, the only Sanskrit commentary to that, the Sanskrit scholars, was by Jayananda, this Indian pundit who came to Tibet and helped in translating or composing his text. I'm not sure if it was composed in Tibet. What's the John or Paul? Do you know what's the general assumption now? Did Jayananda compose his commentary in Tibet, or was it composed already in India? Not clear, right? So in his explanation of the commentary, Jayananda says that the phrase likewise, when just above it said, likewise, the Blessed One states in the sutra and cites extensively from the Descent into Lanka Sutra up to how can one attain full enlightenment. In explaining that phrase, he has the following meaning. Just as the Buddhist statements about a permanent, enduring essence is provisional, permanent, enduring essence. So that's talking about what? Like a Tathagata Garbha, something that is permanent and continues, almost like a soul. Just as the Buddhist statements about a permanent, enduring essence is provisional, likewise, the Buddha's teaching of mind only is shown to be provisional. So here, right, so Venerable Jones said here, Jayananda's explanatory commentary says, stating similarly in the auto commentary means that just as the teaching on an essence that is permanent and stable is an interpretable meaning teaching, so too is the teaching on mind only taught to be interpretable meaning teaching. And Lama Tsongkhapa says he's got it wrong. This is a distorted explanation because the commentary itself makes it clear, that the meaning must be understood in terms of how the teaching of mind only is provisional. So just as the Lankavatara Sutra states, just as to a patient suffering from illness, so just as the Lanka Sutra lines, just as to a patient suffering from illness and so forth, explain the teaching of mind only to be provisional, right? That seems to be quite clear, those lines from the Lankavatara Sutra. So in other places in the Lankavatara, it seems like the Buddha is saying mind only exists. But in other places, he says, makes these clarifying statements that essentially this is, when I say that the mind only exists, that's like a medicine appropriate for certain beings, childish beings like ourselves, the immature, in the same manner, the statements about provisionality of the teaching of permanent, enduring essence proves the teaching of foundation consciousness in the Unraveling of the Intent Sutra is not literal. For this, however, one must first recognize that the teaching of an eternal, immutable essence is not literal. Does he translate it in different ways there? Permanent, enduring. Here he says eternal, immutable. Okay, I forgot to check. I don't have the Tibetan right in front of me. Whether he's just if Jippa decided to translate the same words differently, or if there different words were used there. For this, however, one must first recognize that the teaching of an eternal, immutable essence is not literal. So what's that talking about? It's talking about some kind of Tathagata Garbha, right? Here in the Descent into Lanka Sutra, states, so quotation now again from the Lankavatara, the sutra that is taught purely in conformity with the mental dispositions of sentient beings. So any sutra, any citation, any sequence of words that is taught purely in conformity with the mental dispositions of sentient beings, meaning how they view the world in the conventional sense, is erroneous, is false, with respect to content, it is not a discourse on suchness. So the implication is only a discourse on suchness, on emptiness, is to be expected as definitive. The sutra that is taught purely in conformity with the mental dispositions of sentient beings is erroneous. So it has to be interpreted with respect to the content. It is not a discourse on suchness. For example, not being water, a mirage, is not water, right? For example, not being water, a mirage deceives those animals, actually mentions deer, that take it for water. They're in the Gobi Desert or something like that. There'd be maybe camels or other animals or deer in some places that are searching for water, and they see in the distance a mirage, and because it appears to be water, they go off that way. For example, not being water, a mirage deceives those animals that take it for water. In the same manner, the teaching thus taught will please only the childish. Yeah, it won't get you to real water. It is not a discourse that will delight the gnosis, the wisdom of the Aryas. You should therefore follow after the truth and not be attached to words. So that section in Suzuki's translation, if you happen to have Suzuki's translation, I'm going to read it for us, but it's on page 291. So this is D.T. Suzuki that covers that section. It includes a little before and after, I think. But, O Mahamati, so remember in the Lankavatara Sutra, Buddha is sometimes talking to Mahamati. Mahamati was Bodhisattva or a king or what? Who was he? Remember? Big Venerable Shankar, do you remember who Mahamati was?
Wasn't that his mother or aunt?
No.
Mati is a woman, so
Yeah, no, it's not his mother. Anyway, I can't remember if it was a king or another Bodhisattva. But O Mahamati, what is expressed in the sutras, is in accordance with a way of thinking cherished by all beings. It deviates from the right path. It is not the talk directly established in the truth of suchness. Furthermore, or for example, O Mahamati, the thirsty deer taking the mirage for water and abiding by it does not realize that there is no water here. In like manner, the teaching of all the sutras is an appeal to the discriminating habit of mind on the part of sentient beings. It is not the talk on the truth of suchness as established by supreme wisdom. Therefore, O Mahamati, conform thyself, being a little biblical here. Therefore, O Mahamati, conform thyself to the inner meaning and do not allow thyself to be engrossed in the words of the teachings. Okay, makes sense? So that's that quotation that Lama Tsongkhapa is quoting from Chandrakirti also. So he says, for this, one must first recognize that the teaching on an eternal, immutable essence is not literal. So that's one quotation. And then it continues, it says, and in the same sutra, and the same sutra raises the following question. So this is another quotation from the Lankavatara Sutra. Mahamati asks, in the sutras you spoke of a Tathagata essence that is naturally luminous, right? So, for instance, in the Samadhi Nirmochana and other sutras, the Tathagata Garbha Sutra and so forth, the Buddha talked about this Tathagata essence. What is that in Tibetan? Deijing Shekpo Ningpo. So that's something. That's what we say, the essence of the Tathagata, which is essentially that's what we talk about. It's supposed to be the Buddha nature. Okay. So Mahamati asks, in the sutras, you spoke of a Tathagata essence that is naturally luminous, terminology that Sean will recognize from the Dzogchen teachings, or maybe Savage also, naturally luminous, primordially pure, and endowed with the 32 exemplary marks of an Arya. So an Arya being will have these 32, some similes of the 32 marks of a Chakravartin king, even though they haven't achieved that state yet, and endowed with the 32 exemplary marks of a Buddha existing within the bodies of all sentient beings. So in the Uttara Tantra Sutra, also Maitreya taught that the example that there is a Buddha within us already, we just don't recognize it. You say that like a precious jewel wrapped in a dirty rag, it is covered by the rags of the aggregates, this luminous, primordial, pure, nature. It is covered by the rags of the aggregates, elements, and sense bases, and has thus become tainted. If you speak of such an essence that is eternal, enduring, and immutable, how is this any different from the Tirtika's proposed self? Right? When you talk about the Tathagata Garbha having this nature, being permanent and primordially pure and everything, how is that any different from the non-Buddhist sense of self, or even the wrong view of the lower schools of Buddhists? So Suzuki translated this on page 259. His translation of that section says, hence the following question proposed by the Bodhisattva Mahamati. Okay, so here it's from a Bodhisattva. Mati, when we talk about mati is what, generally low, right? Tibetan low is not, it doesn't mean mother.
I misinterpreted. This is why you need the Sanskrit. Yeah, it means wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, it means Mahamati, great-minded one. The Bodhisattva Mahamati. Here, the following question proposed by the Bodhisattva Mahamati. The Tathagata Garbha is mentioned in the text of a sutra and described as thoroughly pure and undefiled in its essential nature, as endowed with the 32 marks, entering into the physical body of a sentient being, or abiding in the physical body of a sentient being, and enveloped within such matter as the skandhas, dhatus, and ayatanas, and soiled with the dirt of greed, anger, folly, and discrimination, but really described by the Buddha as eternal, permanent, auspicious, and unchanged. If so, Buddha, this is Mahamati saying, talking to the Buddha, if so, is not this Tathagata Garbha that you talked about something of the same order as the Atman in the teaching of the philosophers? He translates Tirtaka as his philosophers. They teach the Atman as eternal, as the creator, devoid of attributes, mighty and imperishable. So this is a question. Yeah, Mikhail.
Thank you, Venerable. Yeah, the 32 marks, they appear only in Buddhas, right?
The 32 marks of a Chakravartin also appear in Chakravartins. Not even necessarily bodhisattvas, right?
Okay. Because Thupten Jinpala in the third line seems to add, I mean, I don't find it in the Tibetan, the Arya. He says 32 exemplary marks of an Arya.
Right.
And I don't see that in the Tibetan, nor in Venerable Jones' translation.
Right. Where are we talking about here? Sensonidang Dempa. Right, right. It doesn't even mention anyone. It just says having the 32 marks. Right. So thanks for pointing that out. This may be another example of an error in Jimba's translation. I think Wisdom Publications reached out to Paul about possibly if they were to reprint the translation sometime in the future, probably not very soon, were there any errors that were found that they could add an addendum to? So this might be one of those. Thanks for pointing that out, Mikhail. It doesn't say aria. So the 32 exemplary marks existing within the bodies of all sentient beings. I think it would mean if you wanted to put something in parentheses there, you'd say the 32 signs of a Chakravartin or the 32 signs of a Buddha. But those 32 signs, similes of them appear even in the Chakravartin kings, right? So many people are born with some similes of these signs in their palms of their hand or so forth. So continuing, in response to this, in Thupten Jinpa's translation, in response to this question by Mahamati, the Buddha points out that since such a teaching is not literal, the teaching on Tathagatagarbha is not literal, it is not at all similar to the Tirtaka's self. The Buddha explains that the intended purport, what is actually intended when such an essence was taught, is the selflessness of phenomena in terms of emptiness, signlessness, and wishlessness. Yeah, let's see here. So, let me just read a little bit further, and then I'll read Suzuki's translation of the Buddha's answer. So the Buddha points out that such a teaching is not literal. Is that what it says here? Tempa dajishimba mimbe. So it's not saying not definitive. It's saying it's not to be taken literally. Dra jishimba. Dra means word or letter. Jishimba, how the letters are, is mimbe. It's not to be taken that way. And thus, it's not similar to the Tirtaka's self. The Buddha explains that the intended purpose, what is actually intended when such an essence was taught, the thought behind the Buddha's teaching of that is the selflessness of phenomena in terms of emptiness, signlessness, and wishlessness. The purpose for teaching the existence of such an eternal, enduring, and immutable essence is to help gradually lead the following classes of people to suchness. So just as we talked about before with the motivation that Geshe-la gave from the triplet of verses from the Precious Garland, talking about how the Buddha taught various levels for various people, first avoiding negativity and creating virtue, and taught the Four Noble Truths based on duality and so forth. Also the quotation about the Buddha teaches like a physician gives medicine and so forth, to gradually lead the following classes of people to suchness. The first being the childish, who shun selflessness out of fear, right? So out of fear that that if you were to embrace this suchness, this theory of selflessness and emptiness, that you wouldn't exist. So they shun it. They shun that teaching out of fear. To the Tirthakas who are attached to the proposition of a self, that the self inherently exists or truly exists. And 3, those who were habituated to such views in past lives. So that's why it's important to try to get our views, settle this lifetime, so in future lifetimes we don't fall into that category that habituated to these wrong views in past lives. So the sutra states, present and future bodhisattvas must not cling to it as a self, this Tathagatagarbha, since to espouse such a view literally would be no different from clinging to the Tirtaka's self. The intended meaning of the sutra is not to grasp at its literal meaning. The explicit objection against the literal reading of the sutra, I think, is this what we say, the harm? The explicit, what was it saying here? Yeah,
Muche, yeah, muche.
muche, is it in there? Yeah, the harm. Yeah, what we usually would translate that as harm. So if you have a particular section, you're trying to decide whether that's to be taken literally or not. What kind of harm would accrue to your understanding or for reality if you were to accept that? The explicit objection against the literal reading of the sutra is this: to espouse it literally, and it's talking about the Tathagarbha, meaning eternal and so forth, would be no different from espousing the Tirtaka's self. As I have already explained these points extensively elsewhere, I will not elaborate further here. So just in a note there, Jimpa says, note 686, in Buddhist hermeneutics,
It's 687, isn't it?
is it 687? I put the wrong number in my notes there. Thank you. 687. Okay, corrected. So hermeneutics, what is that, John? What are hermeneutics? Am I pronouncing it right?
Hermeneutics.
Hermeneutics.
It's the practice of scriptural interpretation.
Okay, so in Buddhist, yeah, go on.
That's it. That's what it means.
Thank you. So in Buddhist hermeneutics, interpretation of the sutras, a standard method employed in explaining a specific scriptural statement as provisional in meaning is to specify three important features of that particular statement: the intended purport, or the gongshi. So gong means that means like the intention of the Buddha. Shi, the basis of the intention. How does he say that? The intended purport. What's the basis of the Buddhist thought? That is the actual intended point. Second, the purpose, the gupa. Those of you who've received teachings on the Prajnaparamita or other sutras are always talking about these three things. The gongshi, what's the intended purpose? What was the basis of the Buddhist thought in saying this? What's the purpose for making that specific statement? And finally, what objections would follow? What harm would follow if one were to adopt the literal meaning of the statement? And in that note, he said, see, Lopez, he has a book called Buddhist Hermeneutics, and quotes Rueg, purport, implicative, and presupposition. You can see that in the notes at the end of your chapter there, note 687. So Buddha says, so Lama Tsongkhapa says, I'm not going to go into more detail because I've explained them elsewhere. Where is he explained?
In the Zhangye Lekshe Ningbo.
Zhangye Lekshe Ningbo, right. Okay. So Suvash, sorry to keep you waiting there.
No, I'm good. Thank you. Venerable George, what is, these three terms, emptiness, signlessness, and wishlessness. I've seen these three show up together elsewhere too, but I've kind of forgotten what is the wishlessness? What is that?
Right. So there are different interpretations, but one of the more general interpretations, they're called the three doors of liberation. Right. So, uh, what we say, wishlessness is talking about the emptiness of things that would be in the future. Signlessness is talking about the emptiness of phenomena of the past. And emptiness is talking about the emptiness of not only the present, but all three times. That's one interpretation. Anyone else have another memory of another interpretation of the three doors, what they represent?
Nature, cause and effect.
Nature, cause, and effect.
Yeah.
So nature, yeah. So emptiness is nature. Signlessness represents the emptiness of causes, and wishlessness represents the emptiness of effects, which will come in the future. Another way of saying it. Okay.
It was 686, George. I thought you were reading the footnote at the end of that paragraph that you.
Okay, I can change my notepad. Okay. 686. Okay, thank you. Okay,
I had
so
one more.
yeah, John, go.
Just again, you were saying, oh, I wonder if because Thupten Jinpa changed up his language when he went from permanent enduring to eternal immutable.
Right.
And in the Tibetan, that the permanent enduring essence is Dakden Ginyingbo,
Okay.
and that is not repeated. It is not stated twice. It just says the second time, the second part of that sentence just simply says Tok Mar Ningbo. So you should understand from the beginning, or
Right. Okay, so it isn't mentioned separately. So Jinpa took some
so there's some
literary license there to just sort of add it in again. So tok den, so tokpa means permanent.
Dakden. It says a Dakden.
Oh, dakden. Say
Yeah,
again.
Dakden. Dak.
Tak.
Rata da da ga dak.
Yeah. Tak, like
Yeah.
takpa. So takpa means permanent. Denpa means enduring or permanent, like when we say Konsho Sumla Ningne Kyapsuchi, Ningne Kyapsuchi, Jokun Dundel, Dender, Dender, Kopashak. I will set all sentient beings into enduring happiness and so forth, permanent happiness. So Suzuki translates, this is the translation that Lama Tsongkhapa is paraphrasing here. I'll just read this, Anna, before we take a break. Thank you for reminding me. Suzuki translates on pages 258, 259 to 260. To this question raised by Mahamati, that we just read when Mahamati asked about that, and also cherished by most bodhisattvas and scholars, the Buddha gives the following answer. O Mahamati, I don't know if you'd have to say, O Mahamati, you can say, what would we say nowadays? Mahamati, you would just put some emphasis in your voice, right? Sort of vocative. Mahamati, the doctrine of Atman by the philosophers is not the same as my teaching of the Tathagata Garbha. Come on, get with it. For what the Tathagatas teach is emptiness, shunyata. They teach the limit of reality, which is a term that we've talked about before, Bhutakoti. You may not remember, but you might find it. The Buddhists, the Tathagatas teach nirvana, no birth, birthlessness, no appearance, no desire, and such other conceptions with which the Tathagata Garbha is characterized, and by which the ignorant are saved from the occasion of cherishing the sense of fear about the Buddhist teaching of non-ego, and they are finally led by the Tathagatas to the realm of no discrimination and no imagery, no mental image, that is, to the entrance of the Tathagata Garbha, O Mahamati, Bodhisattva Mahasattvas of the present and the future were warned not to enter and entertain any idea of ego substance here. Okay, just to give you an idea there. So, okay, so I'm just going to read this and then we'll take a break. So the next part is quoting the Bhasham, the auto commentary. Again, Chandrakirti's commentary says, again in that sutra, because he quotes extensively from the Lankavatara, the sutra states, Mahamati, this truth contained within the scriptures of all the Buddhas has the character of emptiness, non-arising, non-duality, and absence of intrinsic existence. I think Suzuki's quote actually had that in it. So let's take a little break here. You can run and get your tea. Go. We're back.
I think that that essay, the David Ruegg essay that he mentions, is probably available as a PDF. I don't know if you've seen it. It's not light reading, but it's short, and it's very very interesting.
You
Or I
have
could I
yeah,
have it. I could scan it. I don't know if I have a PDF, but I could scan it.
okay. Unless Paul, do you have it already scanned by any chance?
I bet I have.
Possibly. What's the citation, John?
It's the memorable title of the essay is Purport, Implicature, and
Oh,
Presupposition.
yeah.
Okay, let's see.
Sanskrit Abhipraya and Tibetan Gongshi as
Okay.
hermeneutical concepts.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I
I'm
got
a little bit for everyone in our class for minutia like this, and then some general teachings about karma. So let's go continue. So let's see. Yeah. So we read Suzuki's translation above to this question raised by Mahamati and also cherished by most bodhisattvas and scholars. We read that. So now continuing in Jimba's translation, in the commentary, again, in that sutra, it states, Mahamati, this truth contained within the scriptures of all the Buddhas has the character of emptiness, non-arising, non-duality, and absence of intrinsic existence. So here, there is a verse, it says, Deparyang Denile. So that means from that same sutra, from the Lankavatara, Lodro Chempo, that means Mahamati. So I'll see if I can have a PDF for the Sanskritists of the Sanskrit of that. I have that here. At that time, the Blessed One said this to Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva. The teaching of emptiness, no birth, no duality, and no self-nature is found in all the sutras of the Buddhas, and the doctrine is recognized in every one of them. I think this is Suzuki's translation. However, Mahamati, the sutras are the teaching in conformity with the disposition of all beings and deviate from the real sense, deviate from reality, means they're to be interpreted, and are not the truth, are not truth-preserving statement. Mahamati, it is like unto the mirage which entices the deer with its treacherous springs. Maybe I've read this already. The springs are not there, groups of the what do you call it, ponds or water, but the deer are attached, imagining them to be real. So within the teachings disclosed in all the sutras, they are for all beings for the gratification of their own discriminating minds. They are not the truth-preserving statements meant for noble wisdom to grasp. For this reason, Mahamati, be in conformity with the sense and be not engrossed in the word teaching, in the literal teachings. Okay, so these are all meant to, so, when you try to verify some statement, you want to, or some idea, you want to check it scripturally, and you want to check it with reason, based on reasoning. So we've given some reason already. I think we'll give some more reasons, just pure reasoning in the future. But here, these are scriptural citations that can help if you've already ascertained that the Buddha is a reliable person, is pramana, then you can take those statements by the Buddha. Yeah, this is how it is. So then after citing this, so he was quoting that from the Lankavatara Sutra. After citing this, Chandrakirti says, having therefore clearly elucidated on the basis of this scripture, Lankavatara, how all such similar sutras accepted as definitive by Chittamatra are in fact provisional in their meaning. Then the sentence continues. So that means that those sutra citations about mind only and Tathagata Garbha and no external reality and alaya vijnana and so forth, all of them are accepted by Chittamatra as definitive citations or sutras, but they are actually interpretable. So then continuing, such similar sutras does not refer to the two passage. So where is the such? Oh yeah, just in that quote, just above there, it says, having therefore clearly elucidated on the basis of this scripture how all such similar sutras accepted as definitive by Chittamatra are in fact provisional in their meaning. All such similar sutras does not refer to the two passages in the Descent into Laka Sutra that have been just cited. Both of those segments, those citations, are not accepted by Chittamatra as definitive. So which are the two that he's talking about that the Buddha taught, like medicine and so forth? Let's see. Both of those segments are not accepted by Chittamatra as definitive. Furthermore, the commentary already explicitly explained these similar sutras to be passages from the Unraveling of the Intent Sutra. As to what is being referred to in, quote, on the basis of this scripture, Jayananda's explanation, again, our friend Jayananda comes in his explanation of the commentary. Jayananda's explanation identifies it with a section of the Dashabhumika, the Ten Bhumi Sutra, the Ten Ground Sutra, pertaining to the contemplation of dependent origination that negates an agent other than the mind. This is totally bonkers. This is totally incorrect. The rejection of such an agent is presented as the reason explaining how the term only, the word sam or matra, how the term only in the statement mind only in the 10 grounds does not negate external reality. It is not a reason explaining that the negation of external reality is provisional. So let's see. Do we have some commentary there? So Venerable Joan wrote, sutras of this kind are not the two sections of the Descent into Lanka Sutra that were just cited, because neither of them are asserted by the propounders of cognition, the Chittamatra, to be definitive meaning, and because they were clearly explained before in the auto-commentary, Chandrakirti's Bhashyam, to be passages from the sutra unraveling the thought. It's more or less what Shimpa said. the explanation in Jayananda's explanatory commentary that the statement, quote, these passages, unquote, refutes a creator when investigating dependent relation in the Sutra on the 10 Grounds is completely unsuitable. So that's more or less the same as what Jim has translated here. Okay. Making sense? Richard, how are you doing? You look in a different background there than, are you at a concert hall?
No, just a different view. It's making a little sense. I'm having a little trouble with this particular passage, but I just need to read it again.
Okay, good. Good thinking to read again. Okay, so continuing in Thupten Jinpa's translation. Thus, 3 scriptural citations are indicated in the root text in the line, they too are indicated by this scripture to be provisional. That's the 4th line of verse 695, 695D, A, B, C, D. I have to check 4th line. Of these, the 4-line passage in the Lankavatara Sutra, which is, quoting here, just the first line, just as to a patient suffering from illness. Remember, so that was a very important teaching that the motivation that Geshe Zopa gave in 2004 was going about it from another point, from the quotation from the Precious Garland, talking about how a school teacher teaching language to the children starts by putting up big letters first of all, so that they could then make words and then make sentences and then understand and so forth. In the same way, mind only is taught to sentient beings. So the rejection of these, thus the 3 scriptural citations are indicated in the root text in the line, they too are indicated by the scripture to be provisional. Of these, the 4-line passage of the Lankavatara Sutra, just as to patients suffering from illness and so on, demonstrates the provisional nature of mind only with its rejection of external reality. So how does it demonstrate the provisional nature? Because it says that is something that was taught. It explicitly says mind only was taught to the childish, to the beginners that are not ready to have the full-fledged understanding of emptiness. The scripture say, just as to a patient suffering from illness, and so on, demonstrates the provisional nature of mind only with its rejection of external reality. The scripture that reveals the provisionality of permanent, enduring essence, the Tathagata Garbha, the scripture that reveals that to be interpretable, is the one that demonstrates the provisional nature of foundation consciousness, is the sutra citations that show that alaya vijnana, teaching of alaya vijnana, is also to be interpreted. How does this interpretability, how does this provisionality of permanent enduring essence establish foundation consciousness to be provisional? So then the sutra called the densely arrayed, what is that? The Gana, I have here in his note, does he say Gana Vyuha Sutra? It's Ganda Vyuha, isn't it? Do you see that note 691, anyone?
Yeah, that's a misspelling.
There's one, Paul, for your list also. So that's the Ganda Vyuha Sutra.
I think there is a Gana Vyuha, but
maybe, is it? Okay.
But there's no, I don't think there should be an H there. Okay,
well, that is to be checked. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, it says Gen Tukbo Koba. So the Vyuha is Koba, setting out Gen Tukba, the array of, what's Nimbin translate? Densely arrayed sutra. So there's a quotation there. The various realms are foundation consciousness. The excellent Tathagata essence is this as well. The Tathagatas indicate this essence with the words foundation consciousness. That this essence is expressed as foundation consciousness, this the feeble-minded does not even know. Yeah. So Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary to that, what is he talking about? So in the Descent into Lanka Sutra 2, also, we read that the Tathagata essence, the Tathagata Garbha, which is expressed as foundation consciousness, alaya vijnana, together with 7 classes of consciousness. So this is a quotation from the Lankavatara Sutra. In fact, I think we read this earlier when we talked about, so if you add alaya vijnana to the other 7 classes of consciousness, you get 8, which the classes of consciousness that the Chittamatra accept. All of the other schools only accept 6 consciousnesses, the 5 senses, and then the 6th meaning mental consciousness. The Chittamatra adds distorted consciousness and alaya vijnana. So the Tathagata essence, which is expressed as foundation consciousness together with the 7 classes of consciousness. This quotation, thus these two are said on numerous occasions to be synonymous. That Tathagata Garbha is synonymous with alaya vijnana. In fact, what do you think, Subhash? Is that what in your tradition also alaya vijnana is said to be the Tathagata Garbha?
Well, Rigpa does not equate to alaya.
Yeah, Rigpa is not translation of either of those, right?
Correct.
Alaya vijnana is kunshi.
Exactly right. Yes.
Okay, so the question you have a question.
Actually, that was my confusion over here. Is that why is the Descent into Lanka Sutra saying that equating Tathagata essence to the foundation consciousness? Is that right?
Yeah. So according to Chittamatra, that's what the Tathagata Garbha is. According to Prasangika, Tathagata Garbha is you could say is the emptiness of the mental consciousness. Tathagata Garbha. That's usually what we say. That's the Buddha nature, right? The ultimate Buddha nature, the non-abiding Buddha nature, the developmental Buddha nature. The is the one that we meditate in the morning when we meditate on the Mahamudra a little bit. The convention, the absence of not the absence of inherent existence, but the absence of any obstruction in the mind to arisal or reabsorption of events into the mental consciousness.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so let's read on here. Thus, these two are said on numerous occasions to be synonymous, alaya vijnana and Tathagata Garbha. This said, given that one is characterized as permanent and the other as impermanent, which is which? Tathagata Garbha is permanent or alaya vijnana is generally impermanent? Sean's nodding, but that doesn't answer the question.
Alaya Vijnana is inherently existing according to the Chittamatra.
Yeah. So that means it's permanent or impermanent?
Permanent.
Well, President Geek would say if something is inherently existent, it's permanent, but many of the schools say that the impermanent phenomena are inherently existent. It's the Tathagata Garbha that's permanent, right? The alaya vijnana is changing, is impermanent, I think, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. These Thus, these two are said on numerous occasions to be synonymous. This said, given that one is characterized as permanent and the other as impermanent, it cannot be literal that the alaya vijnana is equivalent to the Tathagata Garbha.
But Buddha nature was qualified with takten, with the permanent and stable, right?
Right. So that's the one that's qualified as permanent. The alaya vijnana is generally accepted as impermanent. It cannot be literal. It cannot be the literal sense of the two terms that are being shown to be equivalent. Nevertheless, since foundation consciousness, alaya vijnana, was taught on the basis of exactly the same intended purport, the same basis in thought, underlying the teaching of essence, so from the perspective of their intended meaning, the two are synonymous and share the same reference. Maybe that means they share the same intended meaning. Therefore, by demonstrating the first passage here to be provisional, the latter two is established as provisional because they have the same intended meaning. Venerable.
Okay, so I didn't quite. So this is going back to the sentence, given that one is characterized as permanent and the other is impermanent. Okay, so I didn't quite. Okay, so the one that is characterized as impermanent, the alaya vijnana. Okay, I get that. The one that is characterized as permanent is the Tathagata Garbha. Is that correct?
Right. As Mikhail had remembered the quotation that the Tathagata Garbha is what, Mikhail?
Permanent and stable, takten.
Takten. Takpa means permanent, like the opposite of mitakpa, right? Impermanent. Tibetans often have that, when things go wrong and you're upset, you say, mitakpa, impermanent. It's all impermanent. Don't worry, it's changing. It'll change. Ten means, tempo means, like in our long life prayer that, may our primordial gurus have long and stable lives. So it is something that's permanent and stable or long lasting and so forth.
And that is held by.
That's what's said in these various Chittamatra sutras.
That's what I thought. Okay, got it. Yeah, but this is the Chittamatra interpretation. Yes.
Right. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Pleasure. So continuing, the commentary states. So again, Lama Tsongkhapa is quoting from Chandrakirti. Because it leads beings to enter the nature of all entities, we should understand that the words foundation consciousness refer to emptiness alone. So there, his note, do I have the wrong number again? 692, is that note 690? 693. Okay, I need to have my glasses on when I write these things. So note 693, unless I've got it wrong again, it says the Lankavatara Sutra, and it mentions the pages where this could be found. The FPMT translation of that by Venerable Jones says, the descent into Lanka Sutra also says the Tathagata essence, Tathagata Garbha, proclaimed as the mind basis of all, sort of equivalent, making them to be equivalent, is together with the seven consciousnesses. There's a quotation from the Lankavatara Sutra. These two, this is commentary to that, these two, a basis of all and a Tathagata essence, are taught many times to be synonymous. Moreover, since among those two, one is explained as permanent, that's the Tathagata Garbha, and one is explained as impermanent, that's the alaya vijnana. Because of that, the literal meaning of the two is not taught to be the same. However, since basis of all alaya vijnana, is thought, is taught, sorry, not thought, is taught through thinking about, so this is the basis of the thought, the gongshi, thinking about the very meaning of the essence that was taught through abiding, through thinking about whomever it was meant for. This is very complicated, right? They mean the same since they are synonymous in terms of the intended meaning. Hence, the very teaching that the former is in an interpretable meaning teaching is also establishes the latter to be interpretable meaning teaching. Okay, so the fact that these two are said in the Chittamatra to be synonymous, more or less, logically you would see that as one of them is understood to be interpretable, the other has to be also interpretable.
I think that time, George, you said 693, but then you read the
692.
94.
Okay, I read the wrong one. I'm sorry.
The 693 just says commentary 261b7, so I'm assuming that's Chandrakirti's commentary and not the Lanka Sutra.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so continuing. Thus it is by conveying well with the scriptural citations how the teaching of permanent enduring essence is provisional. So that's something we should understand. So from the even though you can study Uttara Tantra, the famous text where all of these analogies are given by Maitreya, that there is a Tathagata Garbha within all sentient beings that has the 32 marks of a Tathagata, fully enlightened Buddha already within us, encased in rags, as though encased in dirty rags or encased in mud, like a golden statue. All you have to do is knock off the mud, and you'll see the Buddha already exists. Those are all provisional teachings. This is what we understand. Although even now, some people may understand it to be definitive. Thus, it is by conveying well within the scriptural citations how the teaching of permanent enduring essence is provisional that we comprehend how the same scriptural citation from the Lanka Sutra reveals foundation consciousness to be provisional too. Immediately following the passage that begins, Mahamati, this truth contained within the scriptures of all the Buddhas, and continues, has the character of emptiness and so forth. That immediately after that, it reads in that same sutra, so it's Alankavatara, talking to Bodhisattva Mahamati, whatever sutra it may be, comprehend this meaning alone to be contained in it. So what is that saying? 694. Note 694 was the beginning there. It says, immediately following this passage, Mahamati, the truth contained within that. So that's referring to, in note 694, Jimpa says, this is a reference to the Lanka Sutra passage cited in a quote from the commentary on page 386 above. And then he says, see note 688. So those of you who are following that and want to understand that, you can check those. Suzuki's translation here says this. At that time, again, the Blessed One, the Bhagavan, said this to Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva. The teaching of emptiness, no birth, non-duality, and no self-nature is found in all the sutras of all the Buddhas. And this doctrine is recognized in every one of them. I think that's how he translated it. This is recognized in all of them. Okay. And then this is the scriptural citation that demonstrates the provisional nature of the teaching that differentiates between the first two natures. Remember when we talk about the three natures, the dependent nature, the imputed nature, and the perfected nature. I think the first two talk about the dependent and the imputed. This scriptural citation that demonstrates the provisional nature of the teaching that differentiates between the first two natures with respect to their existence or non-existence by virtue of intrinsic character. So remember in the Samdi Nirmochana, the one we were talking about, there's a discussion that we haven't gone into detail about, talking about which of these three natures actually exist inherently, which are not, is different than the teaching in the Prajnaparamita Sutras that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence. In the Samdi Nirmochana, when it's talking about the three kinds of emptiness, some things are considered to be empty of inherent existence or intrinsic existence, others are not.
There was a note 695 there that I think you skipped over that has some.
Oh, yeah. I have to do that one. Yeah. Let's see. What is that? 695. Do I have that here? 695. So the Lankavatara Sutra, he gives the section in the Lankavatara. He says, in brief, Tsongkhapa identifies three distinct statements in the Lanka Sutra, each demonstrating the provisional nature of the first three segments of the unraveling of the Intent Sutra, the Samdi Nirmochana. Those three segments present, one, the notion of mind only with no external reality. So this is one of the things that's being refuted. They present foundation consciousness. Secondly, alaya vijnana. That's also to be understood provisionally. And three, they present the intrinsic existence of dependent nature. That is, dependent nature is inherently existent. That is, from the Prasangika point of view, that is also to be interpreted. This demonstrates the demonstration of the fourth statement, the ultimacy of all three vehicles is only implied and not directly addressed. So I think that's talking about that ultimately all three vehicles enter into the ekayana. I'm not sure. I think that's what that's referring to. Okay, so just as a preparation for next time, this is where we're going to, this next outline, showing through reason how such a statement is provisional. So remember I said before, you can show how, you can make decisions when you're analyzing the texts, the teachings, by using scriptural references, what the Buddha said, as long as you accept the Buddha as a valid person, or you can prove them using reasoning. The best scholars do both. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche often said that in order to understand emptiness, you needed not only reasoning, you needed to have faith in the scriptural presentations of the Buddha. That can be some kind of gel that can cause you to actually make the realization. So now this outline, showing through reason how such a statement is provisional, and in the Tibetan it just says nipa ni, just the second. So you have to go back to find out where that was. So to elucidate through reasoning how the statement about mind only is provisional, how that is an interpretable meaning, the text says, so it's now quoting verse 696. Once cognizable objects are shown to be no more, once you've realized the objects of consciousness that you know about are not inherently existent, then negation of cognition is easily obtained, the Buddha said. So, if you want to understand the emptiness of the mind, you can go about it by understanding the emptiness of the objects of mind. And if you know that those objects of mind are empty of inherent existence, you can show that the mind itself is empty of inherent existence. Thus, if there is no object, cognition is easily negated as a consequence. means a truly existent or inherently existent consciousness is negated as a consequence. So the Buddhas first negated the objects of cognition. Yeah, very meaningful verse. And just read a little bit more for leave foundation for next time. As a skillful means to help lead them to the truth of suchness, the Buddhas first expose those with good stores of merit, those who are not completely lacking in merit because of burning up all their merit and wrong views and acting negatively and so forth and so on. Very difficult for the Buddha to expose them to the truth of suchness. The Buddhas first exposed those with good stores of merit to discourses on the practice of generosity and the like, sequentially teaching them. In the same manner, with respect to those trainees who do not have the capacity to realize the full meaning of the profound truth right from the start, right? Some when we talked about what qualified as a proper vessel of the teachings, those whose hairs would stand on end when they heard about emptiness in this lifetime, showing that they had propensities from previous lifetimes. They had the trainees. So right from right from the start, they can be exposed to emptiness. Those who do not have the capacity to realize the full meaning of the profound right from the start, the Buddhas lead them toward the realization of no intrinsic existence gradually, as we talked about. To such trainees, once cognizable objects, or in other words, external reality, is first shown to be no more, the Chittamatra system, then negation of intrinsically existent cognition is easily obtained. Or maybe I'm interpreting that the wrong way. Once cognizable objects, external reality, are first shown to be no more, means that they are not intrinsically existent, inherently existent. Then negation of intrinsically existent cognition is easily obtained. So the Buddhists have said. Thus being so, the absence of the cognizable, when we talk about sheja and sheje, that which is to be known, sheja, and sheje, that which cognizes, that which knows, subject and object. This being so, the absence of the cognizable, in other words, negating external reality from the outset, is a means to help induce full realization of selflessness. So the Buddhas first taught the negation of external objects of cognition alone, for if there is no object, that is, if the selflessness of external reality has been understood, that which I corrected above there, cognition is easily negated as a consequence. That is to say, the selflessness of consciousness will be easily established. Among those who have awareness of no intrinsic existence of external reality, some will realize no intrinsic existence of cognition on their own, while others will realize this on the basis of a brief explanation by another. Okay, so that's where we'll begin next time.
And why does negating the objects of the mind automatically negate consciousness itself?
Not negating consciousness, no.
Cognition.
If you realize that the objects of consciousness are not inherently existent, then you can apply that to the consciousness. You might have to have some reasoning given by another, or you can come about it on your own by remembering that remember when we said what we say, yonam menam, if one exists, the other exists. If the object exists, there must be a cognition. So they're on equal footing. You can't have a cognition without an object of cognition. So if there is no inherently existent object of cognition, you can't have an inherently existent cognition that's realizing that.
But
Right?
wouldn't the realization of emptiness be an example of where there's no object to observe, but there's still cognition?
You're observing an object, right? You're observing emptiness. Emptiness is an object, right? Emptiness exists. Emptiness is a yul, a sheja, is an object of knowledge, is and so forth. Okay, something to think about. So before we finish, anyone have any gripes besides Sean? Yeah, Diane. Yeah, Louise.
Carrying on with what Sean said, and what you just said. So the emptiness object, that's that's not the emptiness of emptiness. That's cognition, the conceptual emptiness that you're talking about. That would be yes?
Not necessarily.
No.
You can have a conceptual or direct realization of emptiness, but once you've realized that objects of consciousness, so objects of consciousness means all phenomena, right? All phenomena are objects of consciousness. Anything that exists can be known by consciousness. So once you've realized that objects, so, for instance, up till now, we've been talking about the first stanza from Fundamental Wisdom, that in any place, at any time, there is never anything born from self, from other, from both, or from neither, or causeless. This is talking about the emptiness of phenomena. So once you establish that phenomena are empty of inherent existence, you can easily understand that the mind fits within that category, the mind that is knowing phenomena. So I've mentioned before that that's very, very important and very useful to know, because His Holiness is quoted in his what's this called? One of his early texts on emptiness. I can't remember. What was this? Something on the middle way, sort of a short text on emptiness. He quotes from the sutras, once the emptiness of the mind has been established. So first you have to establish the outer phenomena as not inherently existent, then you can understand the mind is not inherently existent. Once you've realized the emptiness of the mind, rapid spiritual progress will be very rapid. To understand the mind is empty of inherent existence. So that would be one of our goals. Besides, in our next section, where we're coming up after finishing up these four negations, we'll talk about the selflessness of persons in particular, because that's where you often first realize emptiness, then apply that to outer phenomena, then apply that to the mind, and then you can make very rapid progress.
Venerable George, I believe it was Key to the Middle Way. Is that
Key to the Middle Way? Yeah, Key to the Middle Way. That's the one, right? Venerable Shankar.
Venerable. So regarding this, so to a mind in meditative equipoise, only emptiness appears, right? So that is the object.
Depends on what you're equipoising on. You said meditative equipoise. If you said the mind,
I'm sorry, a meditative equipoise on emptiness. That is the object we're talking about. The emptiness that only emptiness appears to that mind, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just that's all I was asking.
Right. Okay. So how are we doing? Anyone else have a question? Mikhail, are you okay? Maybe you're off getting tea.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Venerable George, I did put a question there, which is which page in the Key to the Middle Way is that quote on?
Oh, I'll have to find. There were various editions of the Key to the Middle Way. I'll see if I can have that for us on Monday. I don't recall, but that is a well-known quotation from the sutras, and His Holiness has emphasized it, that, wow, this is like, if you really want to make rapid progress, to realize that the mind is empty of inherent existence, that is very, very powerful. So if you can, like say, for instance, in the Mahamudra teachings, when so the Golukpa approach is that you first meditate on the conventional Buddha nature, and excuse me, and you use that as your object of concentration to develop shamatha. All the while familiarizing with the nature of the mind, because you're always looking at the conventional nature of the mind. Then, once you've developed shamatha, you use that shamatha to develop vipassana, analyzing the self of the person. You realize the self of the person. You realize emptiness, conceptually and eventually directly. As a basis, on the basis of that, the basis of the emptiness of the person, you can apply that to the mind itself. The mind itself is empty of inherent existence. And once you've realized that, spiritual progress is very rapid. So yeah, to figure, see the ramifications of that, think about that in the ensuing days. Yeah, anyone have any final qualm? Everyone okay?
To distinguish between like a physical object versus a object phenomena, is it form versus, like, what, how do you, because when they were talking about objects, I'm thinking of like an appearance.
Right. Objects, there are visual objects, there are objects of ear, right?
But I guess are you saying that emptiness is still an appearance?
You see loud sounds or sentences, that are uttered. You can't smell things that you see. All of them have their own realm. So phenomena include the objects of the five senses. In addition to the objects of the five senses, phenomena include the objects that are known by the mind, the mental consciousness itself. So between all of those, that includes all phenomena. Is that getting at your question?
I'm just trying to learn how to speak the language properly. As far as when you said object, I was thinking of like an appearance versus the ambiguity of emptiness not being an appearance.
That which exists. So there are many things that exist, not just visible objects that you say, that cup or that car or that tree or something that has some visible kind of quality, but sounds are objects, odors are objects, tastes are objects, tactile sensations are objects, and then there are also objects of the mental consciousness that it has special dominion over. John, yeah, you had a final question.
This probably I have to wait, but it's just been on my mind. It's translating, the Yogacara language and view. I mean, it's easy enough, not easy, but it's clear enough, the critique of it, the Madhyamaka critique of it. The one way that I wanted to ask about, I think it's a Yogacara view that speaks about non-duality in terms of how both samsara and nirvana have the same ground. The ground of samsara and nirvana is the same. It's the alaya. It's the
right. Well, so that concept that nirvana and samsara are the same, that's not necessarily Chittamatra. If they say that the basis is alaya, that's their Chittamatra view. But even Prasangika in the Sakya tradition also, we talk about the sameness of samsara and nirvana. They're both empty of inherent existence.
Sure.
So in the Lama Chopa Puja, when we're requesting the Guru, Kyoni Lama, Kyoni Yidam, Kyoni Kandro Chokyongte, Tengne Zungte, Jiangshu Ningpo Ba. Getting mixed up. So please free me from the fears of existence and peace. Sishi Jitro, Ngurup Kundro, Tengi Drokso Basho Sung, the final line. So requesting the guru to free me from the fears of samsara existence and from the fears of remaining in the Hinayana peace of nirvana. So both of them, nirvana and peace and so forth is empty of inherent existence. Samsara is empty of inherent existence. So from the Prasangika point of view, both of them are empty. It's not an exclusive Chittamatra view. The Chittamatra view might be that they are and somehow based on alaya vijnana in their own meaning of alaya vijnana. That the Prasangika would say the actual meaning of alaya vijnana is emptiness. They're both based on emptiness. So from the Prasangika point of view, it comes to the same thing. Okay. So yeah, I think we developed some merit. So let's dedicate some virtues. As a result of these virtues that we've created today, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha. Not only the virtues I've created today, the virtues I've created in the past, the virtues I've created today, the virtues I will create in the future, may they all become the cause of leading, of my quickly becoming a Guru Buddha and leading all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. And as a result of these virtues, collection of wisdom, collection of merit, may the supreme precious jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow in my mind and the mind of others, and may that which has arisen already, a little teeny bit of bodhicitta that we have, may it not diminish but increase more and more. And for our precious Guru Lama Zopa Rinpoche, peerless teacher and assembly of children of the victorious ones, Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, victorious Losang, Drakpa, Lama Khapa, spiritual father and your two spiritual sons, together with your lineages, all the objects of refuge of the infinite realms. I'm imploring you to please bestow here and now the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In upholding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings, it gets the words Tupten, like Lama Zopa's name, Tupten Sopa, right? In upholding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you, Lama Zopa, wore the armor of patience, that's the Tibetan word Sopa, that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, I make requests. Sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare of the victorious one's teachings, striving for the welfare of the Buddhist teachings, and for the welfare of mother migrating beings, you suddenly departed to peace. You passed away, at which point I was bereft. I lost hope. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truths of the blessings of the oceanic blessings of the three jewels. So this is calling on the power of the truth, because there's true, the oceanic blessings of the triple gem, and of the truth of the great waves of mind generation of the children of the victorious ones, the great waves of bodhicitta of the bodhisattvas. Those are calling upon the truth of those. May the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. Finally, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, my past gurus, present gurus, future gurus, supreme gateways for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging mercifully with skillful means illuminating spiritual friends, I make this request. And here the intended meaning, please live long and stable lives. So this ring and tem, so long life, have long life, but stable life also, like when we talked about stable happiness earlier in the discourse today. Okay, so challenging time for mind training. I keep on thinking is an unprecedented opportunity we have to turn our mind to the Dharma, where in calmer times we wouldn't necessarily be thinking Dharma. We were thinking of just how things are and enjoying and so forth. But when you're really pressed, like now, you can use that as an unprecedented opportunity to meditate on the Dharma, on the mind training. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you, some of you on Monday. I look forward to seeing all of you on Monday, but I won't see all of you on Monday probably, but look forward to seeing you next Saturday. Take care. When is the full moon of Sakadawa? Does anyone have on their calendar? Is it coming before next class?
The 31st, Venerable.
31st. So what are we now with it? So we're
Monday.
It'll be the day after next class, yeah.
day after. So we'll mention that again. So that is, if you take a look at the Root Institute in India, the FPMT center there's an opportunity if you'd like to make offerings on Sakadawa, the full moon, of lamps. They have 100,000, probably multiple numbers of hundreds of thousands of butter lamps that they offer at the stupa there. One of the great ways of accumulating merit. And also the FPMT has some things to donate, making monetary donations to the FPMT for its work for Sakadawa and so forth. So you take a look at that.
Also for the IMI Sangha, just saying. But
yeah, thanks for saying. For the IMs, our Sangha organization. So look forward to seeing you. Take care.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Venerable George.
Venerable.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.